between all of the teams.
By the way, Monty, here's one thing I want to say, which goes like this. This is where you know European League of Legends is its own bubble, and some people have never left this bubble because, bro, they live in another reality. You know where we're talking about the fact? Think about the other major regions, Monty. Okay, the LPL is still very healthy. They have like a fantastic talent pipeline, loads of top players, obviously. But as you say, even top squads like Gen G have complained that in Korea there isn't like the next crop of like super talents coming through. They're sort of stuck with this set of talents, and obviously in NA, I mean, the joke I'm going to make later is, yes, what a great accomplishment for NA, FlyQuest succeeding is. The whole fucking team's full of Europeans and it's got a Korean mid laner, for fuck's sake. But we'll walk that back. How could Europe be the only region, Monty, where, you know, when you hear these roster moves, you don't even just get the normal hype, bro. It's not like, oh, this guy's good. You have what I call narrative whiplash, which is that there's two opinions and they can't both be true at the same time, but the same person gives them. So I'll give you an example, Monty. When the story first came out, that was like, G2's willing to give up Yike and Mikyx. Every single account, Monty, in League, in Europe, went, that it's impossible to upgrade Yike. He's already the best you could get. Then, like 3 days later, this story came out about the Skewmond guy is going to replace him. And everyone was like, good, he's the next greatest player to ever play jungle ever in the history of League. And you're like, what? Bro, 1 second ago, you wouldn't even have let me put like Jankos or like Razork over Yike. But now a guy who's never played LEC is already just goated out of his mind. Same thing again. You're supposed to believe that there's not that many talents coming through or for other squads. Then there's that story that goes, G2 was willing to trade Yike, Hansama, and Mikyx just to sniff Kalist's fart as he goes to KC. But KC said no because he is the GOAT. So now I'm supposed to believe this Kalist guy never ever played a game in LEC. He's already, Monty, like better than Faker in season 3. He's actually literally the Lisan Al Gaib. He's just going to enter the league and just the whole game will transcend. I guess we'll win worlds as well. Bro, we're going way too hard on this. Like, even if they're super talents, this can't make sense as a transfer market. These players can't really be the most valuable in the whole of the European League. What are we doing here? This is crazy.
I think what we learned after that is that G2 was obviously trying to get rid of Yike and Mikyx, and I think they're on very big contracts. And the problem is that under the German labor law, they have to keep paying them. They can't just cancel their contracts. Yes. So when they offer those players plus Hansama plus a cash payment, you know, it's probably not enough to cover Mikyx and you know, Yike's contracts. Because
also,
otherwise,
it's probably implied
why would they give them to them?
This is why I've heard Humanoid could never be moved from Fnatic, because obviously while the contract's active, you have to take on his contract. It's like American sports, if you think about guys. So the problem is, in this scenario, it's not that you don't want Yike, for example, but maybe you want a different jungler and you don't want to pay as much as you pay Yike, because obviously we've done esports winter, haven't we? So the downside is, that's also, by the way, why people don't just say yes. Because, by the way, on paper, that story made no sense, did it? Like, of course you'd trade the Kalist guy for like 3 of the best players in Europe. Like, you'd be a fool not to. But in this analogy, actually, maybe you wouldn't if those 3 contracts are fucking huge. Maybe that would tank your whole salary. I mean, there's no fucking actual like limit on League, but the money budget's a limit. That's a limit right there for KC.
Yeah, and so like you know, KC, despite their popularity, was very budget strapped in the last year.
Sure,
like they were not splashing out by any means. And so for them, like, obviously G2 is not going to pay the full, the transfer payment for Kalista. The payment that they were offering with this was not going to be the full value of like the contracts for Mikyx and for Yike, because otherwise they would just keep them on the bench and not let other teams have potentially dangerous players to them, right? That's the G2 way. So they were trying to offload what are most likely very expensive contracts to save themselves some money. So really, at the end of the day, now that we know that they've been just fully released, basically, and are now out there, you know, hunting for other teams, they would have to sign a new deal with that team, which, like, obviously isn't guaranteed, because if you are Yike or Mikyx and you can make more money just by sitting there, maybe you choose to do that instead of playing. Like, if your new contract is worth a third of your current contract, I don't think it's financially responsible, given the short period in their lives that they have to make like this life-changing money, to go ahead and sign that new deal, even if they do want to, you know, even if
especially
they do want to
because we have had the precedent set by the Alfaris of the Southmaids of the world that you can, because of the German labour laws, you can just sit there and get like half the money, the crown shot, etc. Monty, there's a reason why there's been good talents that have sat there and haven't gone to ERL teams, because they realised I'd actually be better off just collecting like a large amount of money for a year than just try next year and get a new team when the contract runs. Yeah,
So
that's kind of the meta.
Yeah, I do understand. And also, for those of you who are wondering, well, okay, so I don't think the deal was that good that's been presented by G2. And like, obviously now KC is just free to, if they wanted to, make contract passes at Yike and Mikyx. But I think for Kalista, it's not that he is necessarily like, I mean, people view him as a very good player, but you're right. I mean, the price to get him seems incredibly steep. But I think for KC, it's more about the fact that he's French. It's more about the fact that he's, been an amateur player in this org. And it's not necessarily that getting him onto KC is the most rational decision in the face of buyouts or trading for Hansama, who's also French, so it's like, you still get that going for you if you're KC. I think it's because the KC fan base has an attachment to him. And this just goes to show that LEC, and especially teams like MDK and Carmine Corp, who have these fan bases behind them based off of the streaming personalities, are not really seriously competitive teams, because they will do things that are not in their best competitive interest necessarily in order to get the right players on their team for their fan base, right? And that's not going to do LEC any favors when it comes to competing internationally. Even if KC, I do think, leveled up pretty significantly throughout the year, their weird-ass loyalty actually hindered them from potentially making Worlds, because obviously they should have made some of these decisions sooner. Obviously MDK should have made a mid lane swap out sooner, but these GMs are very slow because there are personal connections between, Kameto and Ibai and the players on their teams. And like the fans have this emotional connection that does not allow them to make the proper roster moves.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.